Hello everyone. Recently the channel Stactory released a video on how to use signals in Godot. I feel this video did an excellent job on telling people how to use signals. However, it doesn't really explain when and why to use signals. So that is what I will try to do today. I will first give you a short explanation, then show a practical example on when and how to use signals in Godot. Before we go to the practical example, I will briefly explain the three primary reasons I see to use signals. The first is to decouple your code. This will make your code more reusable, more stable, and a lot easier to maintain. The second and third on the list are quite closely related and kind of explain the same concept. You should push updates rather than pull them. So here, for instance, if we take the example with the user interface, instead of having the interface constantly check if it needs to update, you rather simply send it an update whenever there is a change to the underlying value. So we have a game here. You can play. It's a very simple game. You have a score, you have lives, there is a goal over on the right side, and if I start the game, some icons will spawn. Click them, I get a store. Click enough, I get an achievement. Click even more, I get another achievement. And if too many icons reach the end, I run out of lives up here and the game ends and I can restart the game. And that's it. It's a very simple game, doesn't consist of many scenes or much code, and it's completely written in GDScript. So, but even in such a simple game, there are a lot of things that can be improved. So first, let's just look at what I have here. So first is my constant class. My constant class simply contains some group definitions and the definition of one of my scenes where it is in the tree. Here I have my moving icon class. This is the icons that you see moving. It's pretty simple. It has a speed that it moves at. It has the spawner that spawned it and the target that it's moving towards. When it first spawns in the tree, I set a target. And there's a method called by the spawner to set the spawner. In the physics process, if we have a target, we move towards it. If we enter the target area, we decrease the lives of the player and we despawn ourselves. Here's the despawn method. The despawn method will notify the spawner that we are being despawned and then it will free ourselves. And finally, if we are clicked, we do something similar. We just increase our score and then we despawn ourselves. If you look at the spawner, also very simple class, says how many icons maximum to spawn, the delay between them. The spawn distance is just used to have a random Y start location. And if you see in the ready function, I just load up this moving icon scene that I had in the constants here. The physics process just checks are we above the maximum of icons and are we set to spawning, which is a boolean. And if it is, just reduce the spawn cooldown, and once it reaches 0, set it back, add the spawn delay, and spawn an icon. Spawning an icon is relatively simple as well. Pick a random spot, then create the icon or instance icon, add it as a child of our parent, and yeah, just set our global position. Tell the spawner that tell the icon that we are the spawner that spawned it, and add one to current icons. When we are notified about despawn, the method that we saw that was called in the moving icon, right here, notify despawn, then we are just subtracting one from the amount of icons. Then we have two more classes, the player data, which contains our score, our lives, is the game started or not, some achievements, it has a method for increasing a score and checking achievements afterwards, decreasing lives, checking for game over. If we game over, we reset the game, stop all the spawners, clear up our icons that are still on the screen. And for checking achievements, we simply do some simple checks to check the achievements. And final class is the user interface. It just updates the label at the top of the screen in the process function. And when you click the button, it starts the game and starts all the spawners. So once again, This button, simple code, starts game, starts spawners, text up here, icons can be clicked, and the spawner will spawn up to 10 icons. If 5 icons reach the end, we game over, and we can start again. Alright, that was it for the introduction of this little game. Now let's see what we can improve. What are the problems of this game, right? Let's start by looking at our moving icons. So for instance, in this scene, I know this is going to happen. If I were to say drop one of my moving icons in here and start the game, you will see as soon as it hits the end, we crash. Why do we crash? Because we are trying to notify this owning spawner that we despawned, but of course it's never set, right? So the game is then crashing. So let's start by improving the spawning system. Currently, the moving icon needs to know about the spawner, which is not great. It would be much better if the icon didn't need to know about the spawner and instead, but could still notify the spawner that it has been destroyed. And this would also allow us to spawn these icons from elsewhere if we wanted to. Maybe from a spawner that doesn't need to track them or something and doesn't really care. So the easy way to do this is to introduce a signal. So let's go about to despawn for our signal. And then in despawn here, instead of telling the spawner about that we're notifying it, we just call about to despawn like this. Sorry. Emit signal about to despawn. That's how you do it. My bad. Alright. What else can we do then? Then we can just remove this set spawner up here. We don't need a reference to the owning spawner. We can go into the spawner here, and instead of set spawner, we can just do connect about to despawn. What's the name of our signal? Maybe we even want to move this into a constant or into the, if we go into the moving icon, constant here, we can take constant signal about to despawn is a string about to despawn. This way, if you rename the signal, it will be easier to reuse, right? So this is moving icon class. We go to the spawner, instead of typing it out here, we do moving icon dot signal about to despawn. We want to connect to ourselves, and the method we want to connect to is notify despawn, right? So we do this, remove the icon because it's not being sent. We could emit the icon as well if we wanted to. I'm not using it, so I'm not going to do it here, but I will show you how to do stuff with that later. So now let's see, this no longer crashes. And if we start the game, what you did notice though is that the lives actually went down. And this is, of course, because it hit the end goal, but this is fine. So let's remove this icon. So through this simple change, by simply introducing this this signal in the moving icon, this about the despawn signal, we now made this code a lot more robust because we no longer have a reference to the spawner, we no longer have a chance of a null pointer exception, and if no spawner is committed, the signal is just emitted and nothing happens. And this also leads to looser coupling of nodes because now the moving icon technically isn't linked to the spawner anymore. It doesn't need to have this method. For whatever is spawns, it doesn't need to have this method notifies despawn anymore, right? So the second thing we could improve here, for instance, is if we look at this user interface. So there are two problems or primary problems I see here. Number one, you have game logic, in the user interface, which is generally not that good. And number two, this thing here, while it works, it is constantly running, right? There's no need to run this stuff every frame. So let's start with the obvious. This is game in progress stuff. Go to the player data, right? So signal game over, signal game start, right? So now we have two signals, one for game over and one for starting the game. So what do we want to do? When we game over, we still want to set the game in progress to false. That is fine. But we now want to send the game over signal instead. So emit signal game over. Let's make this a constant again. So we add some constants and const game over string equals that. Copy that on all. Game start. Game start. We want to here we want to emit the signal game over. We will no longer do this stuff. Instead, we will go into the spawner here and we will write a method function on game over like this, and then false, and then we can write the second one right away because we know we're gonna have it on game start true, right? Then in the ready function we simply do player data connect player data dot signal game over self on game over. We repeat this, we copy this on start, and we connect it to on game start, right? What you also should do when you use signals is go exit tree and disconnect your signals. Disconnect dot signal game over self. I believe that is the self. I believe we need the whole thing, so we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this. Right, so now we connect and we disconnect. This is so that if the node gets removed, we remove ourselves as a caller. Great, now we've done this, and now we need to do the same thing in the moving icon. So let me just copy this code. We go to the moving icon already. We just paste this code in. We obviously don't have a despawn, or we can simply queue free. We can go into the spawner on game over. Current icons equals 0, or rather we can do this on game start. We can reset the current icons, right? Then the icons doesn't matter if they tell the spawner on game over. So on game start, we do not actually need here because we don't do anything on the game start. So we're just gonna remove this one, and we're gonna remove this one. Great. So this will still not work, obviously, because I have not emitted this. I have emitted the game over signal, which will work, but I have not emitted the game start signal, right? So instead of setting this directly and telling the spawners to start, I will go in here and I will add a function, and I will say function start game, emit signal, game start, right? This will start the game. We could also take this stuff and reset it before the start, which might be cleaner. So we just reset it in here. Game in progress equals true. And here, game in progress equals false. Alright, so we go into the moving icon. We check that everything is fine here. We go into the user interface and we change this to game start. Right? So, does this work? It did not work. What did I do wrong? Start game. Was that what I... Start game, right? There we go. So, the game starts. I can click icons. And hopefully, when I lose all my lives, the game stops and I can restart again. This way, I have now removed my code from the UI, which is good. So the UI just calls start game. I no longer had this logic here. I have also removed this queuing or stopping of the spawners and queuing of the icons from here. So there's less logic in here, and it's rather the logic is in the place where it makes sense to have it, which is inside these respective classes. So we can now see that when a game over happens, we delete ourselves, right? We can see that here. We don't now have some third party who is modifying this on game over. We now, if we open this in the future, we very clearly see that when this game is over, we free our icon. And the same in the spawner, we can very clearly see that we start spawning, we stop spawning on game over and we start spawning at game start. This makes the code a lot cleaner, and it's also a lot more disconnected. Before I was checking for these nodes in the groups and stuff. Now I can connect anything I want to the game over and the game end very easily from anywhere. And whenever I need to add game over or game start functionality, all I need to do is connect to these signals, right? So the game, will make my life a lot easier in the future. So let's clean up the second part, which is the score refresh. So you probably guessed by now, the simplest way to do this. First of all, we can do this. We can clean up this button, false. Then, of course, how do I know when to show the button again? Well, simple. I simply connect to the game over function again, right? So go to user interface, connect to the game over, and when game is over, show the button again. That way I no longer need this update. So, what do I do next? I would like the score and the lives to only refresh when they change. Of course, all we need to do is add some signals. So signal, lives changed, new value, and signal score changed, new value. Right, so now it's very simple. Here we just do emit signal, and of course we make the constants again. And lives changed, score changed, score changed, score changed, lives changed. So now that lives changed, emit signal, score live, score changed, and then the score as the value, right? And then we can just copy this, do the same thing here, emit signal, lives change, with the lives as the value. And as you can probably guess, I'm just gonna go copy this stuff again here. And we're going to go into the user interface. Actually we already had it here. I'm gonna go into the user interface, add play data, signal lives change. I'm just gonna, since in this instance I do not care about the return value, I'm just gonna connect both of them to onStats changed. Fuck, we can actually just rename this one. We can just rename this one. Update stats. Toggle spawning button. Right, so we rename that one, and then finally we copy these down and we change it to disconnect. So let's see if this works. We only have score there. Why do we only have score there? Because they haven't updated yet. So we might want to then just do in our, first of all, I'm just going to go to 2D. I'm going to find my score label. I'm just going to set the text to nothing for startup. And then I'm going to go into my script, into the player data. And I'm just going to emit. I'm just going to actually go to the user interface and connect to on game start, right? So game start. I'm not sure if this will work. Will this work? No idea if this actually will work. It will not work because, of course, on game start has a parameter and therefore it will not work. So func on game start, I'm simply going to say on stats changed. Doesn't matter what the value is because I don't use it. And there we go. When you start the game, the label is updated. Alright, so now I got my achievement for clicking there, and I'm dead. Restart, everything resets. So, what did we do here? We cleaned up, or we took the logic out of the UI, and in addition, we changed this loop so that we're now not updating every frame, but we're simply updating on demand, right? This saves us processing power. It's not a problem for such a small game, but if you have a lot of things that are updated in your main game loop over time, as you add more and more objects, this might become a problem, right? So this is a good practice to make sure you only update things when you need to update them. And the same, it's a good practice as well to keep game logic out of the UI, right? Try to keep your logic in the script where it's relevant. All right, so now that we clean up that, what else can we do here, right? What is the next potential huge gain that we can do? We cleaned up the user interface, we loosely coupled the spawning nodes, and now what is the next obvious choice here, right? And the next obvious choice, which probably comes to no one's surprise, is the achievements. I mean, look at this code. This is also running now every frame, right? This is constantly running. So, how do we clean this up? I'm gonna go a little bit further with this. And since these achievements are only once per game, I'm actually gonna add a new scene. It's gonna be a new scene. I'm gonna it's remote. The game is started. It's gonna be a 2D scene. I'm gonna call them click achievement. I'm gonna save it in my scenes. Gonna add a script. Click achievement. Great. Gonna make some export variables. Export what? Let's have one more look at the achievement itself. So what's the, if we go look at the achievement, which is in here, what variables does it need? It needs the score and it needs a text and a boolean, but that's internal. So let's go to the export var required score int equals 0. So let's just say required score. So we just do if required score 0, then we just free ourselves like this, and we add a colon, and finally we add like a var current score equals 0. What else do we need to do? Well, we need to connect, so we do player data connect signal player data dot signal. We are gonna need the score changed, self on score changed. Great. Func. Just get in the habit of writing this as soon as you write your connect method. It will save you lots of hassle. So func on score change new value or value. It doesn't have to be the same name as you have in your other where you define the signal. Let's just call it value, and then we use current score 1 if current score is larger or equal to required score. Then we can do grant achievement, and finally we go here, function grant achievement. What do we do when we grant achievement? We definitely want to queue ourselves up to be freed. We want to print a value because that's all we did for our achievements. So let's go to the player data, find got achievement for clicking blah blah icons, right? So let's put it in here. We can replace this 5 with a required score icons got achievement click blah blah icons, right? That's it. We need to connect to one more signal. Signal game over. We're gonna call it on game over. And of course, we are instantly gonna disconnect it because that's just good practice. And then we're gonna write the function func on game over. The current, we reset the current score so that you don't keep your score between games, right? So, what do we do now to get achievements into the game? Well, all we need to do now is add this node. It will automatically, in the ready function, connect itself if it has a required score. And then, once the score is reached, it will grant the achievement and it will free itself. So let's go first into the player data, and I'm just gonna remove my check achievement function. I'm gonna remove the check achievement function here. And I'm gonna remove these achievements properties, and then we go to our main game. I'll go to 2D. I'll make a new node. Let's make the node 2D, and let's just call it achievements. And then I'm just gonna drop a click achievement in there. 5 clicks. Requires score to 5. Oops. And so maybe 10 clicks. Decide for 10, right? 15. You can see now I can easily add as many of these as I want really quickly, unlike having to write more and more if statements. So let's see if it works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have an error, right? So what's the error? Non-exception function disconnect in base node player data GDT. Deconnect. It's often good to spell things. Disconnect. It's often good to spell things correctly when you are writing code, else you're not going to have a good time, right? So let's see. 1, 2, 3. Actually, I was going to click icons. I forgot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got 5. And if we have, oh, there we go, the 10. And if you have a look here in the 3 and look under achievements, you will see that as I click the icons, they eventually disappear. So now the code is actually not running anymore, right? So we're freeing up processing power as the achievements disappear. Right, and you can do this kind of stuff for a lot of things. Signals are extremely versatile, extremely useful. I highly recommend that you learn to use signals and improve your games by using signals. You can make your life a lot easier with signals. You need a lot less. Your code becomes a lot better, more independent. Yeah. The only thing I want to add here is when you kind of should use signals and when you shouldn't use signals. And what I generally would recommend is that if you have a scene like this moving, the game is still running. This moving icon here, I wouldn't use signals except for the built-in ones for the most part to communicate too much between these things, unless you are connecting them in this inspector. I would certainly probably not connect them from the code when it's internal within one scene like this, which is like an object scene, right? In the main scene, feel free to use signals to connect different things together, like you saw here with these achievements and stuff, because this is kind of a collection scene of different scenes. But if you have something like this spawner or this click achievements, I wouldn't generally recommend, except in very rare cases, to use signals internally. There you can just reference the nodes yourself as you want. So all the code for this demonstration can be found on my GitHub that you can see on the screen now, or you can click the links in the descriptions. There are 2 copies of the code, one from before I added the signals to the project and one for the completed code at the end of this video. And that's it. I hope this was helpful to you.